All right, picture this. It's 1944, and you are strapped into the pilot's seat of the absolute largest, heaviest bomber ever built. You're just sitting there on the tarmac, the smell of aviation fuel, and the roar of four massive engines is literally vibrating right through your teeth. Welcome to this explainer on the B-29 Superfortress. Because before you even think about facing anti-aircraft fire or enemy fighters, your very first, absolute, most terrifying battle, just getting this colossal machine off the ground without it erupting into flames.
You see, for the guys flying the B-29, the moment those wheels left the ground wasn't some graceful, soaring ascent. No way. It was a desperate, white-knuckle fight for survival. Even today, pilots who fly the surviving B-29s will tell you, flight after takeoff was an urgent struggle for airspeed, period. If you didn't fly fast enough right out of the gate, you could die. This heavy bomber required immediate, relentless momentum just to stay in the sky. So as the pilot, you're executing this incredibly rapid, totally unforgiving procedure. Roll down the runway. Check the engine magnetos while moving, because there's absolutely no time to sit still. Fight for every single knot of airspeed. Every single motion you make has to be deliberate. There's literally zero room for error as this massive fuselage rumbles down the airstrip. Because right at this moment, your biggest enemy isn't the Japanese military. Actually, it's your own engines. The B-29 was powered by four incredibly powerful Wright R-3350 duplex cyclone radial engines. But here's the catch. They needed a massive amount of airflow just to stay cool. If you didn't gain speed immediately, those engines would overheat and catch fire. And this wasn't just some theoretical risk either. The second prototype B-29 actually crashed into a Seattle meatpacking plant because of a horrific engine fire, killing the crew and 20 workers on the ground. Okay, let's dive into this because you are strapped into the most expensive weapons program of the entire Second World War, $3 billion. Let that sink in. That far exceeds the $1.9 billion cost of the Manhattan Project. So every single time you push that throttle forward, you are flying a multi-billion-dollar piece of completely unproven, highly volatile technology. Section 1. Inside the pressurized tube. So let's say you make it off the tarmac. The engines cool down, you start to climb. Suddenly, all that tension breaks. You're experiencing a total revolution in aviation. For the very first time in a production bomber, you are flying inside a pressurized cabin, totally sealed off from that freezing atmosphere outside. Now, to maintain that pressure, the B-29 was designed as this sleek, flush-riveted cylinder. But the bomb bays, right in the middle of the aircraft, they couldn't be pressurized. So you've got this height of aviation luxury, except for one wild detail. To get from the front compartment to the rear, you literally had to crawl on your hands and knees through a long, pressurized tunnel suspended directly over the unpressurized, freezing cold bomb bays. And your defense system totally unlike anything else in the sky. Traditional manned turrets just didn't work for a pressurized, high-altitude bomber like this. Instead, a central fire control gunner sat in an elevated position they called the barber's chair. Using early analog computers to calculate things like airspeed, gravity, and temperature, this gunner remotely directed 4 separate machine gun turrets. It was an absolutely astonishing leap in combat protection. Section 2. Hitting the jet stream. Armed with all this incredible technology, you fly from newly captured bases in the Marianas, heading straight toward the Japanese home islands. But just as you reach the target, you hit this invisible, totally impenetrable wall. See, the B-29 was explicitly designed to fly high, at roughly 30,000 feet. And the military doctrine made perfect sense on paper. You climb to 30,000 feet, right up into that thin, freezing air, fully believing you are completely out of reach of enemy fighters, ready to drop your payload in perfect safety. But up at that altitude, you're suddenly battered by these massive, totally unpredictable winds. The pilots were encountering something meteorologists barely even understood back then, the jet stream. These high-altitude currents slammed into the heavy bombers, reaching staggering speeds of up to 200 miles per hour. Your aircraft is just shuddering as you fight with everything you have to keep it steady. And just like that, Mother Nature rendered all of your state-of-the-art tech completely useless. Those 200-mile-per-hour winds just scattered the bombs everywhere. The advanced analog computers and precise sights didn't mean a thing when a gale force crosswind blew your payload miles off course. Precision targeting from 30,000 feet was literally impossible. Section 3. Descending into the Inferno. Deeply frustrated by these high-altitude failures, military planners, led by General Curtis LeMay, instituted a brutal and highly controversial tactical shift. Your Superbomber was about to be used in a way it was never, ever intended to be. And this brilliantly illustrates just how dramatic the pivot really was. You go from high-altitude, heavily armed, daylight precision bombing to low-altitude, nighttime area bombing at just 5,000 feet, dropping incendiary weapons. It completely reversed the established doctrine of the entire war, just a total 180. But to pull this off, the aircraft itself had to change. Strip the guns, remove the heavy remote-controlled sights, eliminate the weight. Mechanics went in and cleared out every single ounce of defensive armor they could, leaving only the tailgun. They needed all that empty space to make room for maximum destructive payload. This new mission, it's an absolute sensory nightmare for a pilot. You descend to a low altitude in the pitch black. Your payload isn't high explosives anymore, it's clusters of M69 incendiary bombs and napalm. And the target isn't some specific concrete factory, but the wooden and bamboo architecture of Japan's cottage industries. Suddenly, the pitch black skies all around you light up in these terrifying, violent shades of orange. The B-29 crews experienced this devastation incredibly intimately. As the fires raged below, violent updrafts of immense heat battered the aircraft, just tossing this massive bomber around the sky like a toy. B-29 navigator Raymond F. Howlerin recalled the horrific raid of March 10th. He said, "You could feel the heat, and I heard people screaming, probably mothers and children trying to get into the moat to avoid the heat." And down on the ground, the reality of these incendiary raids was just catastrophic. Survivor Yoshiko Hashimoto recounted the truly horrific scene. She said, "People were burning alive. My baby was screaming on my back. I looked back and saw something bright in his mouth. It was a spark of fire." The sheer statistics of the March 9th and 10th Tokyo firebombing remain absolutely staggering. 279 B-29s created an inferno that wiped out 16 square miles of the city. Nearly 100,000 people were killed in a single night. And as a pilot up there, the peril was absolute, because for the 14 B-29 crews shot down during that raid, survival meant facing brutal execution or torture once they hit the ground. Section 4. Dropping the atomic bombs. So, despite the complete devastation of the incendiary raids, the war still raged on. Now the B-29 is selected for an unprecedented, deeply secret mission. A highly specialized fleet of B-29s, codenamed Silverplate, underwent some really significant physical transformations. They enlarged the bomb bays to hold experimental new weapons. They completely removed the guns to save weight. And they fitted reversible propellers, which was actually a crucial modification that would later save the bomber boxcar during a highly precarious emergency landing. Then, in August of 1945, these modified superfortresses carried out their missions, carrying payloads that would permanently alter human history. The Enola Gay dropped the uranium bomb Little Boy, and 3 days later, Boxcar released the plutonium weapon Fat Man. To this day, they remain the only aircraft in human history to drop nuclear weapons in combat. The atomic toll brought a swift, shocking halt to the conflict. The numbers are grim. An estimated 70,000 people were killed in Hiroshima on August 6th. On August 9th, an estimated 40,000 were killed in Nagasaki. Days later, on August 15th, Japan finally surrendered. In total, 3,970 B-29s were built. This aircraft essentially bridged the gap between the piston engine bombers of World War II and the nuclear deterrent forces of the Cold War. It was so incredibly advanced that when 3 B-29s made emergency landings in Soviet territory, Soviet engineers actually spent years meticulously reverse engineering them to build an identical copy known as the Tupolev Tu-4. The B-29 Superfortress was an absolute engineering marvel. It was a terrifying machine to fly and a weapon of unparalleled destruction. It undeniably redefined the limits of aerial warfare and gave the military the tool that ended a global conflict. But looking at the ashes of the cities it left behind, we have to ask. The B-29 redefined warfare and ended a global conflict, but at what moral cost? It's a heavy, deeply complex legacy that we are still grappling with today.